on the right.
Sure, I'm Mark. Yeah.
About your military experience and what type of experiences you may have had with unidentified flying objects or anything like this.
Sure. We're going to the first one.
Yeah.
Well, the something very odd happened to me in boot camp, which I think is related. And actually, this whole that boot camp experience sort of helped me understand a little bit about what was happening during the March 2014 thing, that where there was something in my bedroom. I was like right in the middle of Navy boot camp in Orlando, Florida. Been there for 5 weeks, and the fifth week of boot camp is what they call service week, and that's where the recruits actually take on some of the leadership positions at boot camp and help run the place. So a lot of my fellow sailors would be working in the galley helping serve food, and some of them would help out with the administrative staff. My job was to sort of not really like supervise, but there were a lot of people in the military, a lot of guys that were leaving the Navy because of either medical reasons or some other thing. So they were sort of getting mustered out, I guess, so to speak, and they had this barracks, separate barracks for them, and they would just be waiting around for their orders to come through, and they were going home. So they were really just super chill people, not really caring about anything. But somebody just had to sort of keep track of what was going on there. So I was part of that crew, and it was the first taste of freedom I'd had in 5 weeks, because everything's very regimented in boot camp. Nobody was really watching over our shoulder there, and so I was just like on top of the world that Saturday when we first got there. It was the first time I could get a newspaper and get a radio and find out what's going on. So I stayed up late that night, about 10 o'clock, just reading the paper and listening to rock and roll on the radio. And I was the last person awake, I think, in the room, except for the guy who was standing fire watch down at the end of the hall. So hop into bed, look at my watch, put my head down on the pillow, and as soon as my head hit the pillow, the room started to spin. And all of a sudden I realized I couldn't move. I could see the ceiling. I could hear the 60 other guys in the room snoring around me. And I was totally awake, but I could not move. And the room was spinning, and I had this whooshing sound going on in my head. And this never happened to me before. I had no idea what was going on. So I'm lying there, and then this is very bizarre, but there was this vision that popped into my head of this old-timey console radio, from the 1940s or whatever, this old AM radio about as tall as this table, which, I'd never seen before. But then there was an electronic voice that came booming into my head at the same time. It sounded very much like a synthesized voice. And it said, "You don't want to fight." And it was echoing in my head. And I had no idea what it meant. It was just really bizarre. But after hearing it and realizing that I couldn't move, I decided, well, actually, I do feel like fighting. I don't feel like sitting here being paralyzed. So I put whatever effort I could into moving again. I had no idea what was going on. And so with all my effort, I finally woke up. I was already awake, but I finally broke whatever spell, the paralysis ended. And I sat up and I looked at my watch, and like 20 seconds had gone by since my head had hit the pillow. And so I didn't know what to make of that. There were no like UFOs. I didn't see anything unusual except for, the room was there. But the very next day in the Orlando Sentinel, the story came out about the Gulf Breeze UFOs. And I read that that morning afterwards, and I thought that's a really interesting coincidence. But the paralysis thing was very much like the one I felt back in March 2014. So I think that might have been UFO related too. That was a very strange thing. Second thing happened when I was on my very first deployment. My ship was based in San Diego, and we were going on our first deployment. This is like September 19, let's call it 1989, I think. And we were actually steaming in that same Catalina Island area of the Western Pacific, right off the coast of California. I was on the mid-watch. I came out to take a little break, so I walked to the back of the ship, the fantail, and it's pitch black except for the stars. You could see a little bit of the city lights in the distance. We weren't that far off the coast. And all of a sudden, I hear a voice right next to me, and it's the aft watchman who's normally out there by himself, but he walks up to me and he says, and somehow he could see me. I couldn't see him. He knew who I was. He said, "Hey, Turner." I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "What do you know about satellites?" And I know a little bit about satellites for what I did in the military. So I said, you know, I don't know. Ask me, see, you know, I was kind of curious what he meant. He's like, well, do they move? And I said, well, you know, they tend to go in a straight line, right? They're in an orbit, so they don't tend to move so much. Like, what'd you see? And he's told me, he said, just a minute ago, there was this light that came shooting up from the horizon all the way over our ship and then took off like a shot to the left of us. And I'm listening to him and I'm like, it doesn't really sound like a satellite to me. It doesn't sound like a ship or a plane. You know, I was like, I don't know what that was. And he's like, oh, okay. And he went back to work. And the whole time I'm thinking, he must have seen something that wasn't a ship or a plane. You know, these people spend 4 hours at a time just staring at the sea and at the horizon. Their job is to identify stuff, and they've probably seen it all. And for him to come up to me and say, hey, I don't know what this thing was, he was a little bit scared. He wasn't going to admit it, you know, but he was hoping that I was going to tell, oh, it's a satellite. Don't worry about it, you know. But it was, that's that same area of the Pacific that whole Tic Tac thing took place. So, and I didn't know that at the time. Like I said, this was 1989, but there's definitely something going on.
And well, this is a time when if you report too much, then
People might look at you a little funny.
you can get
Yes.
pushed out of the military as well.
I had a security clearance, and so I didn't spread around all these things that I'd been seeing and hearing about. But afterwards, I found out from some of the people on my ship that they had other experiences too. Like after I got off my ship, when it was in the Persian Gulf, there was UFOs being seen there on a regular basis, and the Navy crewmen would be screaming into the headphones, talking to the bridge. I have no idea what that is, like totally scared. And they wouldn't log it. They were like, we're just going to pretend that didn't happen. But everybody who was on watch at the time saw something, and it just never got written down. Nowadays, there's a change of attitude, and I think you're going to see a lot more reports about things like that, because you can't afford to ignore any kind of like UAPs. Could be drones, could be Chinese things, could be spy balloons. You know, you can't really ignore that kind of stuff anymore. But it happens on a regular basis, and I would listen when people had stories like that to tell me.
I think this will be a good segue. And going into this phenomenon, one question I always had was, why would an alien spacecraft have lights? They don't need it for navigation. They're not worried about something running into it. This is something that possibly traveled from light years away, correct? And the simplest way is that just look at the ISS or any type of satellite, and that it's not light, it's the reflection of the sun. Because it's so high in the atmosphere that the sun is not blocked by the earth from it. And that kind of leads us into, I'm going to let Les talk a little bit. Les is in, as Mark was talking about, dark skies, you can see things you typically don't see in a city or even a town like what we're in of about 50,000. Dark skies, you can see a lot, and it's not just meteors and such that you see, burn green for half a second, disappear. At Les's particular spot, things show up all the time.
Yes.
And yeah, let's talk a little bit about
Okay, great. Yeah, so I live in Mineral Bluff, Georgia, and it is one of the darkest areas of Georgia and even possibly the southeast United States. It's very dark. So we are about 1,900 feet up. We are 5 miles from Tennessee, 5 miles from North Carolina. And so me and my wife actually sit out there on the deck quite often and see different types of craft. The first time I saw a craft was actually on a video. I set my camera out. If you could grab that for me, I could kind of show you how I catch the UFOs. There you go. Okay, I was actually in Searcy, Arkansas. I'd come back from Georgia. I went to a haunted house, and I was getting a lot of orbs and that kind of thing. So I said, you know what? I prayed about it. I said, Heavenly Father, I would like to be able to see something that I've never seen before. So when I got back, I had this. This is just an old thing. I put some Velcro on it, and then I put Velcro on the back of all my cameras. So I just kind of do this right there, turn it on. Okay, turn on the camera just like that. Okay, and then see, you can kind of see it. Now what I did is just kind of flipped around and look at the sky. All right, now nowadays I've graduated to this, basically just a door hinge, and really my gig is teaching people how to catch them. That's really what I do. I don't say what they are, who they are, where they're from, any of that stuff. I have some ideas, but really what I want people to do is just know that they're out there, and how do I catch them, and what do I do? So now I've got this on this, and when I aim it up to the sky, let's just say that he's up in the sky, right? Just aim it up there, just let it sit there for about 45 minutes. And then I take the cord and put it into my computer and run it back. And then I just kind of skim through it really fast. And I'm looking for gamers, people who have a fast eye. I'm looking for stoners, people who can see the whole screen and just be like this, but they see more. And you would think it's kind of funny, but no, honestly, when you do see that, you can see stuff that you wouldn't normally see. You happen to see different dots and stuff. So my very first video that I did, it was at my mom's house in Mineral Bluff. I sent it to MUFON, and it ended up being an unknown, the very first one. So then I started to get more and more, and the reason why people don't see them is because we're always looking at our phones. That's what we do all day long. We're always looking down. We're never looking up. So I tell people, if you could just look up once a day, count to 10, see what you can see. We've seen all kinds of stuff. So now, what you had talked about, the government and them saying that UAPs are real. Okay, well, now that we know they're real, what would we do? What are we going to do next? The best thing to do is to communicate. Well, I've got a friend of mine in the UK. His name is Nigel Impey. He is a hybrid. He is also a reptilian. He is a benevolent reptilian. And we believe every single second and every single word that he says. And just listening to him. So I asked him, I said, Nigel, now that we know that they're real, what are we going to do next? How do we communicate with them? And he said, telepathy. We've already heard about telepathy. So the way that we do that is I use a vocal telepathy. And also in my mind too. Now there's also CE5, Dr. Greer. We really don't mess with any of that. I would walk out there just right now and say, hey, my name is Les Durant, and I know that you're real. Can you fly by so I can see you? And keep looking up. Don't ask and then put your face back down. Just say, hey, I'd like to be able to see you. And say, I know you're real, and it would be great to be able to see you. Literally I've got a video, literally within 30 seconds, they're flying by. And it's, same thing happens to my wife here, Claudette. We do the same thing. And sometimes she asks in her mind, sometimes I do too. It's just kind of vocalizing, but keeping an eye on it. We did it last night. We saw some flashes. We see flashes all the time. But why? Because we're looking up. I've got tons and tons of video. Can I mention my channel? Is that okay? Okay. I have a channel called Objects and Orbs on YouTube, and you can look at all my UFO videos. You can look at my very first video that is the MUFON Unknown. You can download it if you want. You can do whatever you want with it. And so we catch so many that I'm dedicating them now. I had one just the other night. I said, you know what? I'm going to dedicate this one to Bill. And yeah, it was awesome. I mean, it was awesome. It was going like this, and then all of a sudden it kind of like went into something else. It was crazy. We see different orbs that you're talking about. You've seen some of the videos that I showed you, and you're like, oh, that's what I've seen. Yeah. And it's not about me, it's not about her, it's not about us. It's just about what we're trying to do to get all of this information out. And I think that all of us are meant to be ambassadors, because we can discuss it like we are now and show you the evidence and say, all right, you make up your own mind. I'm not going to say these are real. I'm just going to say, this is the evidence that I have. What do you think about it? But if I was to walk up to you and say, hey, my name is Les Durant and UFOs are real, you'd probably be like, you're crazy. Get the heck out of here. But after you kind of start to see the evidence that we have and listen to what all these other guys are saying, I agree. I was in the Navy for a little bit. I know about that, Service Week. And I understand what you talk about too. And in the dreams, I've talked to a lot of people that have the exact same experience. And the thing with that is, if you have a Manila folder, you just put all your evidence in that folder, and it starts to stack up. Then the puzzle pieces start to get put together. When you realize that, then that makes these guys even more pertinent and even more valid and validated. I like to be able to talk to people who had that stigma and now they no longer do. Now I go into Facebook groups. I will say, okay, have you seen anything that you can't explain? I'll go into, if I logged into Facebook, I would look at Wilson, North Carolina. It might be just a garage sale group. But if I put in there, have you ever seen anything you can't explain in the sky? I can guarantee you I will get people that will private message me and they'll show me videos. Some I've even called. And I've heard the same thing. It's that stigma. And we just got to get rid of it. And, you know, my main thing is that, okay, when we call them now, they come. So what are we going to do next? Then we have to be able to interact. And they were interacting with you guys. So I need to kind of raise my frequency. I've been told that you have to be grateful. You have to be thankful. You have to just kind of raise your frequency. And there's places that'll help you do that. There's a university in McKaysville that teaches that. I'm like, how crazy is that? McKaysville is about 5 miles from where I live, in a little town. So how is it that I want to raise my frequency, and 5 miles from here, from where I'm at, there's a guy who teaches that?
So can I ask you a
Yeah, of
question?
course, you can ask any.
So in other words, what you're saying is, in other words, the way I'm reading what you're saying is you wish to see them.
I want to see them, yes. I wish to see them, yes.
You want
yes,
to see
and if they come, yeah.
Well, let me tell you something. You better be careful what you wish for. My experience, the very first one I had, was not the little ice cream cake that you may want it to be. It terrified me. It took control of my life for 25 years. I lost wives, friends, and children because I communicated my experiences to them. And what did they think? You're a whack job, Dad. But I wasn't. Not until the object that was placed in my body was removed did it end.
Yeah, and exactly. Oh, I'm sorry. And so, even with that stigma, it's very hard to get over. And fortunately, it's starting to kind of turn around. Like even now, if I go to work, I tell them what I do. I said, this is why I'm here, and then I show them, I show them my stuff, and do I want to see them? I want to see them, but I want to go in prepared. I want to go in prepared.
Yeah, but
And-
Les, that was the last thing from my mind of
Right.
I had no idea. I didn't know what was going to happen. It was like, how do you react? How do you prepare yourself?
Yeah.
for,
How do you prepare?
how do you do that? And why would you do it if you never had any kind of initial incident, such as was in my case? That
Right.
was the farthest thing from my mind.
Yeah.
Was anything like that. And then boom, there it is, and you're in the middle of it. How do you handle it?
Right. And it yeah. So and it happens to just everyday people.
Well,
And
yeah, that's
exactly.
us.
Right.
Right.
And if you're not into this stuff, I'm sure that they're eventually going to visit me. And Claudette's like, well, as long as you leave the debit card and the keys, we're good to go. Right. But she's getting to that point now to where she really wants to kind of see him more too. It's just because we're educated now. If I had not had anything, I would have been scared to death. Yes, I would have been scared to death. She's seen some to where she's felt very peaceful. And so when I go, I'm going to go with the knowledge of that whatever happens, happens, but God's going to take care of me. I already know that.
And there's reports in the different interviews we've had pleasant encounters and we've had unpleasant encounters. Now, sometimes I've had people try to explain to me that, well, the unpleasant encounters, it's not that they're unpleasant, it's just that they were scared of what was happening. So that's what made it unpleasant. It wasn't some creature, some entity being evil. It's just we didn't understand, so we're scared. Then you've got the other side that's like, no, there's no doubt this was something that was not for me, it was against me. Now, in this UFO community, in this the whole, especially once you're starting to get to the abduction side of it, you've got two factions, and you've got those that if you see a kid let go of a red balloon and it floats up in the sky, by the time it clears the top of the building, hey, that's a red UFO. And then you've got the other side that you can have a spacecraft, like like an old rocket land right in front of you and say, no, that's a star, it's a satellite, that type of thing. So what do you all think, and I'll start with you, Mark, with the revelations from the government, their admittance, and I'm of the belief that they can be admitting something, but they could also be trying to cover something up by saying that, because we know that ideas are planted that way. Do you think those revelations, as well as what happened in front of the congressional meeting a month ago, do you think that's changed? In other words, if these events happen to you now and you were to come out from events that happen now, do you think people will be more accepting?
Absolutely. The attitude has changed about, reporting these things. I think the chain of command has been made clear that they're not going to dismiss this stuff anymore. I've talked to some of my fellow friends, former Navy, who served on submarines, for instance, and he told me that they hear things that are moving at impossibly fast speeds underwater all the time, to the point where they're just instructed, don't even bother logging that anymore. If it's not something they can identify that's a threat, they don't log it anymore. That's changed. The reason I think that you're getting a lot more reports now, in addition to the attitude change with the congressional legislation that just passed, is that our radars have been tuned a bit more precisely now, so that we are able to detect things that we would ordinarily just dismiss as being an anomaly, like birds or whatever. It used to be that we would only look for planes or missiles or things like that, but now we've got much finer resolution on things like that. So you're going to be able to get those types of reports that you didn't get before. The other thing about this is that for the chain of command to have trust in the people who are running these machines, who are looking at these radar returns, they have to be honest about what they're seeing, right? So if they're detecting things that are moving faster than we know is possible, then you can't just dismiss those people anymore as being, you're wrong about it. That's why the Navy, I think, came out and said, yes, these videos are authentic, they're real, we don't know what they are, because you can't have air crews up there not believing their eyes, right? We don't have the luxury of second guessing things anymore with these hypersonic missiles that are being developed, with these drones that can pop up out of nowhere. If you see something, you have to be able to identify it, or at least know, that it's not a threat. So that is going to make people a lot more open, I think, to reporting things. And you're going to hear a lot more reports, and it's kind of like you said, when you started off just joking with your mockumentary about this whole topic. But I found that when I just make a little joke about it around friends or whatever, inevitably somebody will come up to me and say, well, that was kind of funny what you said, Mark, but I had this thing happen to me about 3 years ago that I can't really explain, And it turns out there's so many more stories that people just hold on to because they don't know what to do with them, right? I mean, I was bewildered when I woke up and realized that something had come and visited me, because, as I mentioned in the interview, you don't know what to do with this. Nobody ever trains you. Like, what do you do when an alien shows up in your life, right? How do you integrate this into everything else you're doing? So I think that the stigma is kind of dying down. There are people taking it more seriously. Obviously, it's got Congress's attention. I read a headline just 2 weeks ago that over 20 different whistleblowers have come forward and talked to Congress since David Grush did his deposition in front of Congress. So yes, that's going to become more of a thing, and we can't ignore it anymore, which I think is a great thing.
Let's reset cameras. Drew, if you have any questions, if anybody has any questions, feel free to do it.